Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the really high-stakes world of keeping one of the ocean's absolute most stunning creatures alive in captivity. We're talking about the mandarinfish, or Synchioropus splendidus. Now, these guys are heavily prized for their incredible, vivid colors, but they also hold a pretty notorious reputation as being one of the single most challenging marine fish you could possibly keep. So let's figure out exactly why that is and how we can actually set them up for success.
It's kind of this tragic paradox that we really need to address right up front. Because buying a mandarinfish, it isn't just about getting a beautiful new pet to look at. It's actually about solving a really complex survival puzzle. And the biggest piece of that puzzle is their diet. We're going to look at the precise strategies you need to keep these fish from falling into a slow, preventable decline.
To prevent that starvation, we're going to follow this exact roadmap. We'll start with the feeding challenge, then move right into preparing a mature ecosystem, break down captive feeding strategies, look at managing tank competition, and finally, wrap up with how to avoid some really common pitfalls.
Okay, part 1. The mandarinfish feeding challenge and the real stakes of keeping Synchioropus splendidus. Let's look at the core problem. While their exterior is absolutely mesmerizing, the harsh reality is you can't just sprinkle some flakes into the water and expect them to survive. In the wild, they have incredibly specific dietary needs, and a lot of individual mandarinfish will totally struggle or even outright refuse when they're offered the standard frozen or prepared substitute foods that other aquarium fish just gobble right up. To really understand their needs, we have to look at what they actually eat in the ocean: copepods. These tiny, living crustaceans are the absolute, non-negotiable foundation of their survival. Basically, mandarinfish spend their entire day just grazing on this microfauna.
And they aren't your standard mealtime eaters who just gorge themselves once a day. No, they are constant grazers. They eat tons of tiny meals all day long. What this means for you is that your tank literally has to function like an all-you-can-eat microscopic restaurant. They need a steady, reliable source of food to hunt down in between any scheduled feedings you might try to offer.
Which brings us to part 2, preparing a mature ecosystem. Basically, building the restaurant before the guest even arrives.
Establishing a safe home for a mandarinfish follows a timeline that is measured in months, not days. You absolutely need a biologically stable aquarium where live rock has had plenty of time to develop a diverse, booming population of microfauna. It's really only after that ecosystem is thriving that you can safely introduce the fish.
You're literally curating a habitat from scratch here. Live rock is absolutely essential for copepod breeding, but you also need pristine water visibility so the fish can actually hunt by sight, plus highly stable temperatures, well-oxygenated water, and a flow that is strong but definitely not blasting them around the tank.
So the crucial takeaway here is that patience is everything. Seriously, rushing this ecosystem timeline is the fastest possible route to starvation. Skipping ahead just means your grazing buffet is going to run out of food before it even properly opens. Even if you think there's food available in a newer tank, it is almost never enough to sustain a constant grazer over the long haul.
All right, part 3, captive feeding strategies, or how to keep the grazing buffet fully stocked.
Once your tank is actually matured, the work definitely doesn't stop. Your tactical playbook relies on combining natural grazing with targeted supplements. This means adding live copepods weekly, implementing separate feeding times to help beat out tank competitors, and maybe even using an external breed and maintain refugium. That gives you total control over the food supply. You can try doing slow transitions to frozen foods, but honestly, only do that gradually and only if the fish is showing consistent interest.
What's really critical here is urgency. A lot of mandarinfish will flat out refuse prepared foods at first. Now, this doesn't mean they're doomed, but it absolutely means you cannot rely on a wait-and-see approach. If they won't eat, you can't just wait around hoping they'll get hungry enough to change their minds. You have to pivot immediately to live pod supplementation so they don't start declining.
Because they are such small, specialized eaters, you've got to be incredibly observant. Follow these steps exactly. Watch closely for a sustained skinny appearance or a visible drop in their activity around feeding windows. If they're refusing the prey you offer and you see those signs, you have to make immediate food availability your top priority. Switch straight to live pods to stop that dangerous decline in its tracks.
Moving to part 4, managing tank competition, surviving the community tank battleground.
Because look, even with the perfect diet and a perfectly mature tank, your mandarinfish is still in extreme danger if it has the wrong roommates. You really need to surround them with peaceful neighbors.
Fast grazers and aggressive midwater swimmers, they'll easily outcompete your mandarin and steal all the food. You even have to watch out for certain cleanup crews or pod-eating predators that might just decimate your pod population before the mandarinfish even gets a chance to graze.
And this next point is a massive realization for a lot of keepers. What looks like a thriving, bustling community tank to your eyes might actually be a completely barren desert for this specific specialized hunter. Just because a tank looks full of life does not guarantee you have enough of the specific prey size and type that a mandarinfish can efficiently capture.
Finally, Part 5. Avoiding common pitfalls. Keeping your mandarinfish off the brink. Let's look at the traps that even experienced hobbyists fall into.
First up, please do not project human eating habits onto this fish. You really can't assume that flake or frozen food is close enough. As we've established, they are highly specialized, and a lot of individuals just lack the natural instinct to even recognize prepared diets as food. Trying to force it is just going to result in starvation.
Second, we have to talk about stress. Mandarinfish are incredibly sensitive to it. If you're acclimating one or if you're constantly disrupting the tank, you have got to minimize chasing and netting. If you stress them out with repeated disruptions, their feeding response will literally just shut down entirely. A calm transition with consistent routines is way more effective than trying to repeatedly force unfamiliar foods on them.
The ultimate golden rule here is to be proactive. Never underestimate the time it takes to build up a prey base. Preventing that slow slide into underfeeding is totally possible, but trying to fix a starving fish after it already looks weak, that is nearly impossible.
There's a quote here that perfectly captures the essence of what we've been talking about today. What's in the water can be just as important as what's in the bowl. With a disciplined plan built around frequent access to live foods, these fish can absolutely thrive. But you have to remember, you aren't just feeding a fish in a bowl. You are completely curating its entire microscopic universe within that water.
So, before you bring one of these truly breathtaking creatures home, you have to honestly ask yourself, are you genuinely prepared for the science, the months of patience, and the intense daily dedication required to keep that microscopic ecosystem thriving? Think about that. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.